afternoon and welcome to BizTech's Asian Midday Market Watch. It's the 16th of November and we have our regular Thursday guest with us, David Kuo, founder of the Smart Investor out of Singapore. David, as always, great to have you on the show.
Salamat Hari, Brian. A regular Thursday and a regular market, and you'll find out shortly why.
Absolutely regular red market. But first, let's take a look, David. Before we get your insights, let's take a look and see how the crypto markets have performed, and then we'll go through some of the numbers around the region. Now, we're going to start with Bitcoin, which is at 37,475. It's up 5.36%. Ethereum is at 2,056. So it's up 3.81%. Looking across the regional stock market, we start close to home, David, where you're at. The Straits Times Index is down 0.15%. The KLCI is down 0.34%. Shanghai is down 0.58%. The ASX All Ordinaries is down 0.75%. The Nikkei is down 0.34%. The Hang Seng is down 0.38%. And rounding up the numbers, we've got the Kospi, which is down 0.07%. So pretty much status quo in terms of when David Kuo is on, red across the region. Tell us why, David.
A sea of red, yeah. Why am I not surprised that we have a sea of red? Look, I think we've had a pretty good run as far as the stock market is concerned. So it's not entirely surprising that we see some profit taking. People are not entirely convinced that the stock market rally is there. Some people talk about a bear market squeeze. In other words, there are a lot of people shorting the market and they have to cover their positions. So that caused the stock markets to spike over the last couple of days. And then you get a bit of profit taking. So I think it's fairly normal. But to be honest with you, we get a lot of economic data that comes out. And what's been driving the market fairly recently has been the prospects that inflation is starting to moderate over in the US. And then suddenly everybody jumps on their soapboxes and say, look, the Federal Reserve, they're done with hiking now, so we can safely go into the market. It's a risk-on strategy. And then suddenly we see some retail sales figures over in America, and they appear to suggest that retail sales are quite strong. So suddenly the next group of people jump on their soapboxes and they go, look, the American economy is still fairly hot at the moment. There's no chance that the Federal Reserve is going to cut interest rates. And then everybody starts piling out. So we're going to get this flip-flopping all the way. And as a long-term investor, Brian, I don't get interested in any of this. I mean, sure, I read the economic numbers, I read the economic reports that come out, but I'm not driven by that. Instead, I'm driven by the fact that I need to go out and buy shares. And if the stock market is expensive, well, I'm going to have to pay more for my shares. And if the stock market is down, I get to buy my shares a lot cheaper. That is the way I think, and I think that is the way that people should approach the stock market, rather than to react to one set of economic numbers and say everything is rosy or everything is actually going to hell in a handcart, Brian.
Now, David, on a different note, all eyes this week are essentially on the APEC summit, and obviously President Xi and President Biden have met. What are some key takeaways out of that?
Okay, look, it's fairly important that these two leaders of the two biggest economic powers in the world right now do sit down and talk. But let's not lose sight of the fact that these are two very, very different economies. One is command-driven, China. The other is actually market-driven, the US. And you're never going to get these two to agree on which is the right approach to either driving markets or driving economies. China thinks that it must be centrally organized and it must be centrally propelled. And what the Communist Party decides is right for the country is the way that they should be going ahead with the economic problems that they have. America, on the other hand, says, look, this is a market-driven economy and the markets will decide what will happen. But it is important that these two economic powers do talk. But I think the crucial fact is China is on a charm offensive. China needs to tell the world that everything is okay in China. It's actually quite safe for you to bring your money in and invest in China, because what is actually lacking at the moment is foreign direct investments. And if people lose confidence in China. They're not going to put money into China, in particular American businesses. If they're not going to,
And David, just on that note, David, there have been a lot of reports in the last few weeks where investors are essentially repatriating profits or taking money out of China.
yeah, yeah.
So that obviously adds to what you've just mentioned in terms of China's on a real charm offensive to try to shift perceptions.
And how is it going to do that? And I think this is the big question. Just simply turning up at an APEC conference and standing up and either walking side by side or shaking hands with Joe Biden is not going to be the panacea that it requires. It needs the confidence of people to say, I mean, let's not forget, I mean, these companies are investing millions, if not billions of dollars in an economy. And you're not going to do that if you don't have any confidence that, number one, that you're going to be treated fairly in China, and number two, that you're going to be able to take your money out when you want to. I mean, look, you're in Malaysia. You remember what it was like during the Asian financial crisis. And even today, when I talk to people about investing in Malaysian shares, they still bring up, the club crisis of the Mahathir.
And
Look,
they must be pretty old by now.
well, yes, they are, but that isn't that the whole point that people don't forget. And how difficult is it to try and convince people of my father's generation that it's actually safe to go and buy shares in Malaysia? And they go, I got bitten once, I'm not going to get bitten again. And I think that is the problem that they have. And I think China needs to go on an even greater charm offensive and also demonstrate through actions that they are not out to try and sort of destroy businesses, and that they are going to actually treat people fairly. So that's my take on that. So what you take away from the APEC conference, I think you will have to make up your own mind. But as far as I'm concerned, China has to do an awful lot more. And let's not also forget that the China housing crisis at the moment is far from being resolved. And how is that going to play out? I don't think it's going to play out in weeks and months. It's going to take years, if not decades, for that to play out, Brian.
Absolutely. On that sobering note, thank you very much for your insights, David. And thanks for
Thank you.
coming on the show. Now, we've been speaking to David Kuo, founder of the Smart Investor out of Singapore, and this has been BizTech's Asian Midday Market Watch. I'm Brian Fernandez. Check out the show on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.